this month's theme, of course, is Live Your Best Spiritual Life, because that's what we're always striving to do. And the title of today's talk is Falling for the Me Hoax. Ooh, don't you just love a good hoax? I think we all have to agree, if we sit and think about it, that we do in fact live in a mystery. And we refer to it as the mystery. We're living in the mystery. Because there's lots of things we know, and there's lots of things we don't know. And having to paradoxically live with that knowledge and function in this world, and somehow reconcile our humanness with our divinity, it's a lot. And we do have our saints every once in a while, don't we? You know, the religious community talks about the communion of saints. Is that a familiar term? The communion of saints, and of course, if you're speaking to a member of the church, I suppose they would tell you that all of the saints in all of time, which is what the communion of saints would include, those past, as in used to be here, now are dead, and those future who haven't quite come into manifestation in that particular incarnation yet. And they'll tell you that, of course, the head of the community of saints is Jesus. I'm not so sure that we should have a hierarchical sense of a communion of saints. Aren't we all divine equals? Aren't we all born from that same power and presence? Aren't we all made from the same stuff? And that kind of takes me to this me hoax. Now, I'm sure initially it started out as just being part of the mystery. One thing, we don't know how people got here. Do we know how people got here? One theory is that we began as single-cell organisms that either came out of the water or out of the trees, or I don't know. If you were a Youngbloods fan, you're talking about, he who left me here. So maybe we all came down on a big space bus and were dropped off from some other time and place. I mean, who knows? But the one thing we do know is that we've had an opportunity. If there was a time when there were only 2 people on the planet, and they were on a safari in the jungle, and all at once a lion spotted them and started chasing them, and they turned to run, I'm sure one said to the other, God, I don't know if we can outrun this lion. And the other one said, I don't need to outrun the lion. I only need to outrun you. That's so old. But that's how old this whole hoax thing is. Because if that had turned out differently, and they had realized that each of them was part of the same being, there wouldn't have been any need for the fear of me coming out of this okay. And if it doesn't work for you, sorry, too bad. But when we talk about that communion of saints, we're talking about it in terms of that wisdom tradition. Okay? We don't spend a great deal of time or pages in history books or spiritual or religious books talking about those things that didn't particularly work and applauding those people who did those things who didn't really work. You know what I'm saying? We talk only about the things that helped us forward in our progress, in our evolution. And sometimes, it's tough to remember that evolution can only be because of involution. Okay? We are involved. We have involved within us that divinity, that spark of God, that course of life without which nothing can ever be. And it's once we open to that awareness of that involution, we can then progress onward and upward into that evolution that we're so big on talking about sometimes. But we can't do that if each one of us, especially from the time of the first two guys, if each one of us is thinking about me, and I am different, and you are different, and we are other, how are we ever going to evolve into our greatest yet to be? How are we ever going to get, we talk about a world that works for everybody. We talk about how perfect life would be if everybody loved everybody else. But then somewhere along the line, here came that hoax. And it's been perpetrated upon us from the second we were born. Well, not the first second, but probably about the second or third day after the glow wore off and the lack of sleep caught up with our parents. And pretty soon we're hearing about, you are different in this regard, and he or she is different in that regard, and everybody's different. And that doesn't necessarily have to be just me, this person, you, that person. Because there's not very much, it's a very small step from the hoax that I am different from everybody else to the position that, well, my school is different than every other school. My city's different than every other city. My club is different than every other club. My country is different than every other country. My culture, my race, my language, my ethnicity, my gender is different than everybody. There's no logical end to that. Is there? The only logical end would be something that cannot possibly be. The logical end to that line of thinking is that all these separate entities eventually just grow so far apart that they just disappear or blow up because there's no way of sustaining that. Because God is undivided. There's no division. We talk about God being a unity, and we talk about oneness. And I believe that is the case. And because it's the case, there can't be all these little, truly separate little entities running around. We have individualizations. And as we learn in this teaching, the science of mind, we are not using the greatest artist, the greatest musician, the greatest composer, the greatest anybody in any field of any time never created something out of nothing. All we get to do, and what we get to do, is we get to use that amount of the creative process that is what life and God and spirit is all about. We get to use that amount of it that we can recognize and avail ourselves of. So, I'm not much of an artist. And I attribute that to the fact that, well, I haven't really got rid of those blocks to artistry that for somehow, somewhere along the line came to be in me. Maybe it was because my first stick pictures got ridiculed in preschool. I don't know. Who knows why we don't do something. So we do know that all the creativity in the world doesn't work for us unless we allow it to work through us. And that too is one of the basic premises of the science of mind. We have a tendency to think that we live in a normal world, ordinary. Everything's ordinary, except every once in a while something percolates up that grabs our attention and seems to be fantastic, seems to be out of the ordinary. We even have those experiences. don't we? That somewhere in the middle of our ordinary life, we'll be doing something or be thinking about something or be somewhere and enjoying some sort of thing, usually in nature, when all at once we realize that, yeah, I'm a part of this. I'm not just a part of it, I am this. And I get to experience it at my level, but the fact is, I am the whole thing, and so is everybody. We are all part of, remember, there's only one life. That life is God. That life is perfect, that life is my life now. And we say that so often, thanks to our founder, Ernest Holmes. But sometimes we just need that reminder. Sometimes we need to just stop and think, this is it. It's not out there. It's not off in the distance somewhere. Aren't we sometimes in a hurry to get to the future?
Yeah.
There can only be one reason for that. The only reason that we could be in a hurry to get to the future is that we think for some reason that there's something, some point in the future is more important than what we're doing right now. It's more important than who we are and where we live and what we think and who we love and how we see the world. But here we are. We've had lots of future moments come and go, and probably they didn't hold the promise of what we thought we were rushing into. And the only way they can hold that promise is how? If we plan for that by addressing our thoughts right now. We can't address our thoughts right now if we're not here right now, if we're not present right now, if we're not thinking right now. And those thoughts that we're thinking right now, if we're thinking about how unlucky we're going to be, we get to be that unlucky. If we're thinking about how great life is and how lovely the world is and all of us in it, that's what's going to turn out to. The one thing about this spiritual law is this. It's going to give us exactly what we demand from it. Remember, we don't get what we want. We get what we expect. So, in the example from your Terry Cole Whitaker reading, the son that expected all the bad things to happen, or the lucky things to not happen, got exactly that. And the one who expected to have the good things happen got exactly that. Once again, it's like gravity, electricity, it's like anything else, any other principle. When we plug into that principle, the principle doesn't say, gee, are you sure that's what you want? No, it doesn't work like that. When we plug into the principle that is life, that is creation, that means that what we put into that mold, if you will, in that fertile ground, that is the ground, the consciousness from which all things come, when we put in that the picture of what we want, what we are expecting, that's what comes back. Doesn't get tweaked. There's not some little demiurge up there, some little mini-god saying, well, I don't know, maybe we should tweak this a little bit. Maybe you want happiness on, alternate days and not so much on other days. It doesn't work like that. And as long as we're thinking that we are different from everybody else, we're going to end up getting those things back, because that's what the spiritual law does. It gives us what we think. Our thoughts become those things. And I can't even describe how systemic this is in our world. And not just our world. When I would say our world, I'm not just talking about Orange County or, the U.S. or any particular geographical kind of area. I'm talking about people and the people everywhere. I saw on YouTube the other day this little thing about the first black woman astronaut going to the space station. I didn't even know where to start beginning to unpack that. The first black woman astronaut. Well, astronaut, I'm in awe of astronauts. Are you kidding me? That takes a lot of moxie to actually leave a perfectly good planet, go flying off into space. But what struck me was, this was a headline. And we all know that headlines, you never see a headline that says a dog bites a postman, because it happens so often. But if it was to ever happen, we would see a headline for certain that said, postman bites dog in retaliation. We would see that headline because it's so out of the ordinary. And yet, when we allow that sort of thing to be out of the ordinary, why is being a woman astronaut out of the ordinary? Why is being a black woman astronaut out of the ordinary? These are things that we make extraordinary. They shouldn't be at all. But that's because for some reason we've been trained that, well, all of these little, we call them niches, right? All of these little oddities, if you will, explain to us that the world is different and it's populated by different beings. But there are no different beings. If there's only one life, and there is, and that life is God. You know, Judge Thomas Troward talked about the species, and talking about man. And he drew this analogy between like sea life and human beings. In sea life, I mean, there's so many gazillions and billions and quadrillions of fish being born all the time. And the reason they are is because there's a whole bunch of bigger fish that eat them, and so on and so forth up the line. And that's the way it has to be, because if there weren't predators, there would be so overrun you'd be able to walk across the ocean because it'd be nothing but packed in fish. But he brought that to the thing of mankind, saying that, yeah, we're going to lose a lot of people due to sickness, due to illness, due to short-lived, for whatever reason, wars, famines, pestilence. Oh, and what's that thing we got going on right now? You know, the pandemic sort of thing. But this entire life that is God has been constructed so that, knowing that there's that going to be that percentage of us and that percentage of time for all of us where we are missing the mark and not on target with the one life, and that channeling into that law that would make our life be perfect. There's going to be instances where not everybody lives as long as everybody else. And he said, you know, that's just the way it has to be. In order for the race to continue, there has to be enough of us so that we can lose. Imagine a rocket ship on its way to that space station, and it's got shingles, and shingles come off as you're going. Doesn't matter if they come off, it still gets there. That's us, the human race. We're still going to get there. We're going to get there because there's nowhere else to be. We are going to get back to our place of existence, which is that consciousness that is God, regardless of whether we are attending to it or not. Because life is good. Everything that happens ultimately is for good. And there will be a time, speaking of unordinary things, you know, they say that it was the Big Bang, just a singularity, that a little perk, a little percolation from that coffee pot. of consciousness, and boom, everything exploded. And here we are, 13.8 billion years later, gathered right here. Wow, 13.8 billion years. So how old, it's your birthday? How old are you? I'll tell you how old you are. You're as old as the universe. We're as old as the universe. And we were all born at the same time because we are all born to be the body of God. So I've got hopefully 5 fingers on each hand or 5 toes on each foot. So I've got all kinds of little different things going on in this one body. And that's kind of like we are in the body of the world. We are all just individualized usages of that creativity and that consciousness and that beingness that God is. And if we forget that, which we do on a daily, hourly, every minute basis, and we start to thinking that we are so far separate from everybody else, we're always going to have these headlines that say, so-and-so, who is another part of the same life that we are, just another individualization of it, has made a headline because he or she, for some reason we think, shouldn't be capable or worthy or for whatever reason to be able to do something that we do. I mean, what kind of sense does that make? Albert Einstein gave us this greatest thing. Remember? Now, I'm not going to pretend I could sit down and read his theory of relativity, but, I mean, we all know the bottom line, right? Energy equals mass. Energy is mass. He didn't say that this mountain has energy in it. He said, no, this mountain is energy. And he didn't say this energy became this mountain. He said, no, this energy already is this mountain. We are individualized little bubbles of mass, but we are all the same energy. Can you get that? Because if there's only one energy and we all get to participate in it a little bit, even though it's shaped a little bit differently, why can't we see that it's all the same energy to begin with? If we took a piece of, we took a tree and murdered it, and then skimmed off the bark and took the wood, and we fashioned it into something, I don't know, let's start with something big. We fashioned it into a canoe, and then our canoe sprung a leak, or we invented a motorboat and didn't need the canoe anymore. We could redesign that. We could change the energy of it and turn it into, I don't know, an end table. And when we got tired of that end table, because something new is coming out every year in the fashion world, we decided it could better off be a baseball bat. We haven't changed the energy. All we've done is change the way we see it, change the way that we use it. We have to stop changing the energy such that we think that it's different energy that flows through you and me and everybody else, because it's not. It's the one energy. It's the energy of God. It's the energy of that consciousness that grounds all being. It's that energy that once upon a time existed without us, and somewhere in the future is going to exist without us. But it's not going to change, and we're not going to change. We will change our physical aspect, but that energy that is you, that is me, that divine energy, that light in God that we are, is not going to change. We're as old as the universe, and we're going to get to be as old as it ever gets to be. So happy birthday. All we have to do is put the me aside and talk about the we. So with that in mind, I'd like to just take a moment and know that in this energy, and by the same token that mass is energy and is interchangeable, it's identical, that energy is love, and it is the same, and it is identical, and it is interchangeable. And when we ask, what does love ask? The answer is clear. Love asks that we live in love, that we live for love, that we act with love and through love. And that energy is what makes the entire world go around. And when our love is seemingly individualized and kept to ourselves, it's of no value. But when pooled and put together in that community of saints and spirits that we are, there's no limit to what it can do. So no, we affect this melding, merging back into that infinite, eternal consciousness by simply treating one heart at a time. Showing each heart that it is not a standalone, that it's not by itself, that it's not having to reinvent everything in life every day, because we are part of that overall consciousness that God is. And that being the case, we know that we can use that law that is part of that spiritual package, and we can determine our world by simply using that law with love and having it produce that which we want, which is that unity, which is that non-dualism, which is that we are all in this together mode. So it's with this in mind, I just say thank you, God. Thank you for this being the case, and thank you for making me aware that we are that unity that we talk about, that we are one, that we are each and all living your life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is.
I'm thankful, so grateful. I am one in the Spirit all around me. I am thankful, so grateful. I trust in God.
Ah, yes, so as the ushers come forward, let's just take a moment to remind ourselves that this is our opportunity to share our abundance, because we know that all our good comes from the one source, God. And for this we are grateful. And for those of you at home seeing this service after it's been uploaded to YouTube, thank you so much for your continued support. And we get that support from everybody by way of the donate button on the website, by way of mailing their donations down here, or just stopping by and visiting with Tomoko or the duty practitioner at the same time. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So it is. Thank you.
This day is a witness to my sacred purpose, to all that I meant to be. This day is a witness to my sacred purpose, to all that I letting it in, letting it flow, letting it go where it will go, letting the power of your presence show the way, letting it in, letting it know, letting it lead, that I might follow, being a witness to your presence every day. This soul is a witness to my holy purpose, to all that I'm born to be. This soul is a witness to my holy purpose, to all that I'm born to be. Letting it in, letting it flow, letting it go where it will go, letting the power of your presence show the way, letting it in, letting you know, and letting you lead, that I might follow, being a witness to your presence every day. This life is a witness to my rightful purpose, to all that I've come to be. I will bear witness to your love. I will bear witness to your love. I will bear witness to your love for all my life. I will bear witness to your love. I will bear witness to your love. I will bear witness to your love for all my life. I will bear witness to your love. I will bear witness to your love. I will bear witness to your love for all my life.
Once again, Tommy Cosentino. Let's just know that something wonderful is happening through me right now.
Something wonderful is happening.
It's this thing called life.
It's this thing called life.
It's happening in my mind.
It's happening in my mind.
It's happening in my body.
It's happening in my body.
It's happening in my heart.
It's happening in my heart.
I know it.
I know
I
it.
feel it.
I feel it.
I believe it
I believe it.
because I'm one with it.
One with it.
Thank you, God, in me.
Thank you, God.
Amen.